Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Paul M., Jackie A., and Mike P. Steve Robertson is our guest on discussions today. Steve is the president and CEO of Infinitum Copper, the copper exploration play with various projects in Sonora State, Mexico, and also Arizona, United States. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol INFI and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol INUMF. Steve, welcome back to the program. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Well, Steve, let's kick it off here by getting your position on the broad market and then also the copper sector.
Yeah, well, there's a disconnect between those two things, that's for certain. The market, as we all know, has been very painful over the last month or more, and it's market sentiment that is your investor sentiment that seems to be the problem there. In terms of the fundamentals of, major parts of the economy, things are still rolling along quite well. We can see in the copper market, for instance, which is a great leading indicator for the economy. The inventories are still very, very low, and consumption is high. And so, there's a lot of reason to believe that the fundamentals are still in place for a very bullish copper market. And we still have the looming deficit that's about 3 years out from where we're at now. In 2025, we're going to have a very dramatic shortage of supply in the copper market. And so it's very frustrating to take a look at the overall market sentiment when we see the great fundamentals in place for things like copper.
We'll see how long the deleveraging lasts in the broad market and how long that spills over into places like the natural resource sector. Well, last time we did a podcast, you were with Sun Metals, now called Northwest Copper. You left, you took some time off. How did you come about this new opportunity with Infinitum?
Well, I kind of picked up where I left off, actually. Peter McGaw and I were both involved in Sun Metals, and after I'd finished the merger with our neighbor Serengeti there to create Northwest Copper, I took my leave from the company, and Peter immediately introduced me to Jorge Ramiro, who really is the founder of Infinitum Copper. They had two gold companies and a silver company in their group, and wanted to have a copper arm. They wanted to develop a premier copper explorer. So Peter introduced me to Jorge. We hit it off right away and embarked on this path to get Infinitum Copper up and running. It took us a while to get it public. We started to trade on March the 16th. So it was about 7 months to go through the go public process, which just indicates how backed up they are at the exchange. But now that we're trading, we're doing very well, firing on all cylinders.
Well, why don't we go right to that? Why don't you give us a quick overview of the company and what the immediate objective is, and then we'll jump into cap structure.
Well, the basic premise for developing the company was we didn't want to be another copper explorer that was going to be bringing out old assets that didn't make it in the last price cycle, and then putting a little bit of lipstick on them and to see if they would make it this time around. We wanted to be a true exploration company, and we have a unique advantage over most of our peers in that we've got a great core group of geologists that are proven explorers, proven discoverers, and have had a lot of success in the past. So Peter McGaw, uh, in my opinion, the world's leading authority in carbonate replacement systems. So a lot of experience with copper skarns. And then we've also got on as a counterpart to Peter, I guess, on the porphyry side of things, we've got Doug Kerwin, who was an executive vice president with Ivanhoe Mines and led the team there to a number of discoveries when he was at Ivanhoe. And many of those discoveries are now in production as mines. So two guys with a lot of experience, a lot of success behind them that really create a lot of opportunities. And so the idea was to build a portfolio of properties from the opportunities that Doug and Peter bring to us. And So far, we've got two great projects in the company. La Adelita down in Sonora State in Mexico, and that's a high-grade copper-silver skarn. And then we've just acquired another project called Hotbrusha in the heart of the Arizona Copper Belt.
Very well. I appreciate that, Steve. Move to capital structure here for a moment, then I want to come into each of the projects. But just talk about the general capital structure, shares out, where you guys stand on cash. Maybe just speak to the history of the company a little bit more.
Well, we went public, as I said, on March the 16th. We had 40 million shares outstanding. We went public at a price of 40 cents. That gives us a market cap of $15.5 million. Today we're trading at about 32 cents, so it's down a little bit. That's a reflection of the markets, not certainly not a reflection of how things have been going in the company. As we get out to do things like this, Andrew, and tell the story, more and more people will be following the story. But when we raised money, it was all privately, and so we haven't done a public fundraise yet. And as a result, most of the stock is held by close associates and friends. And so, the liquidity is a little bit low right now, but we've been doing a lot of marketing in the last month, and you can actually see quite a significant increase in the liquidity over the last month. So we are getting a better and better following of the story as we move along. And I think that'll just continue to increase as we start to roll out some additional exploration results.
And maybe just talk a little bit more about prior financings so far that the company's had, and maybe just taking that back to the founders round. And then also, will the company be seeking to raise capital, say, within the next, 3 to 6 months?
We raised our money privately. As I said, the two rounds that we did were at 15 cents and then at 40 cents. We did not raise money when we went public. And the reason for that was because of the structure of the deal that we did to get the Adelita project. We optioned it from a company called Minorum Gold. And the deal was that we would raise $4 million privately. And then when we went public, we would issue enough shares to Minorum to make them a 16% holder of our company. And so if we had done a capital raise at that time, it would have just meant issuing more shares to that public company. So we held off on the raise. We have about $1 million in the treasury now, and that's going to, be enough to fund the rest of the program that we've got underway down at Adelita. But clearly we're going to continue to monitor the markets, and we're going to need to go back to the markets at some point here for additional equity. We'd like to see better stabilization in the market, and maybe better appreciation of our stock price on the back of perhaps some exploration results before we do a raise. But certainly we'll need to fund Hotbrusha and hopefully an expanded program down at La Adelita.
Anybody else on the people side that you want to mention here? I know you mentioned a few names before, but anything you want to add to that before we get into the projects?
Yeah, a couple of key people, in addition to Doug and Peter, who I've already mentioned. Jorge Ramiro really is quite an expert in the capital markets game. So he's not a technical guy from a geological perspective, but he does bring a lot of experience and insight into the capital markets. He's the founder of the whole group. He met his partners actually in Hong Kong doing their MBAs. Michael Wood and Marco Roker, the other two partners in Emerging Markets Capital. And so after they'd done their MBAs, they formed this EMC in Hong Kong, and it's really a merchant bank mining house. So they incubate junior mining companies like Infinitum Copper, and but it's a very hands-on approach. They're deeply involved in the companies that they sponsor, and that's either being on the executive or being on the board or advisory board of the company. So a great group of guys to be involved with. And then beyond that, I should mention two really impressive geologists that we've got working for us down in Sonora. Ariel Navarro is an advisor to the company, and then Rafa Gerardo is our senior exploration manager, and he's our point man on site. Rafa has been working with Peter McGaw for over 30 years now. So he's had a great mentor and working relationship with Peter. And he also not only does he bring a lot of geological ability to the table, but he's also a great ambassador for the company and the local community. So it's very important in Mexico to make sure that you have land access agreements with the local ejidos or local agricultural communities. And Rafa was able to secure those land access agreements quite easily because he has the trust and knowledge of the people, right? Walking down the street with Rafa is like walking down the street with the mayor in some of these small towns. So it's great to have him on point, making sure that the interests of the local community are being addressed, as well as making sure that we have some of the best geologists in the area working on our program. And it's proven to pay off for us already. We've had some tremendous success with this exploration season, even before the drilling got started.
With respect, let's stay on Sonora, Mexico, La Abuelita project. Why don't you talk about what deposit types we're dealing with here on this project? What is the plan, Steve, and what are your expectations for this project at this point?
It's not uncommon in a lot of the carbonate replacement systems in northern Mexico to have a buried porphyry system that drives the entire mineralized district. And that's exactly what we have on our property. We've got this buried copper moly porphyry. And what that did was bring in all the metals into the area. And when those fluids carrying the metals go out into the surrounding area and react with the limestones, it deposits high grade mineralization. In our case, it's high grade copper silver mineralization. That's what we have at the Cerro Grande zone, which is the main zone that we've got on the property. It's got about 15 drill holes into it so far. We know it's about 400 meters long and 300 meters deep, but it's still open in all directions. And in addition to that, we've made 3 brand new discoveries on the property this year. I mean, it's it was expected that we were going to be able to find more mineralization, but 3 significant individual discoveries already in this season is a pretty tremendous result. And the best of those 3 was actually at Las Trancas, one of the zones toward the south end of the property, and we had a trench there that discovered mineralization, 9 meters of 16.5 grams gold and 2% copper. Very high grade mineralization. We have no certainty on the controls on mineralization there or really anything about it. So we've got additional trenching going on in that area right now to open it up further to see if we can figure out how to approach this from an exploration perspective to prove that it's got some legs to it, some depth and breadth to it. So very exciting things going on in the property. We're just going to continue to fund the exploration there, but with a keen eye to trying to define something that would be mineable. We're not going to chase after the porphyry target because in this part of the northern Mexico, typically the porphyries are what caused the mineralization, but they're not the best target themselves. The surrounding high grade mineralization is usually where the meat is. And so that's what we are going to be chasing, is the high grade copper silver skarn part of the system. And we think that a relatively modest size of the high grade mineralization that we're seeing would form a fairly productive mine in this part of the world.
Talk just a little bit more, a few steps down the road here on this project. What would you envision to happen here post some success? Let's assume some success here. What would you be doing next? Just give the audience a little more flavor as to the priorities here, and then we'll move over to Arizona.
Well, I really like Adelita because for a company like Infinitum Copper, it gives us a lot of optionality. If we find a big porphyry system, quite often those big open pit mines, like you see a lot of in Arizona, their capital cost to build something like that is in the billions of dollars. A small, say 10 million tons of 2% copper equivalent, which would be a realistic target for Adelita in the high grade copper skarn. Something like that is quite manageable by a company like Infinitum, and we have the expertise within the company to be able to build the mine. So it gives us the option of, we don't have to sell out to another copper company or a copper developer to necessarily bring benefit to the shareholders, we have the option of actually being able to go out and build a mine and operate it if that looks like it's the best path forward. So pretty exciting from my perspective, and we do have a lot of operational expertise in the company, and I think most importantly, we know how to build a developer team, and so that would be a good option for us.
That sounds good. Looking forward to seeing what happens next on this one. And how about Hotbrusha Arizona? Talk about this project. What do you like about it? What are the immediate plans?
Yeah, Hotbrusha is a really interesting. This is kind of a research project. Now, it's amazing to me that this opportunity has gone undiscovered before now, because it really is a compelling story. We've got a project where we're right next door to a former operating mine called Christmas Mine. We're right in the heart of the Great Arizona Copper Belt, one of the most productive copper belts on the face of the planet. And there are elephant deposits in every direction. We've got San Manuel Kalamazoo to the south of us. We've got the Resolution deposit to the north of us. We've got Morenci to the east of us. And we actually have a smelter 2 kilometers away from the edge of the property. So in terms of location, you couldn't imagine anything better than what we've got here. But the geologic thesis behind this story is very compelling. The mine next door, called Christmas Mine, produced from 1905 to 1981, and it produced about 25 million tons of 1.8% copper. So a really high grade resource, moderate size. And when you look over at our property, you see nothing but volcanics. But because of the stratigraphy in the area, we know that underneath of those volcanics, there should be the same host rocks that hosted all the ore over the Christmas Mine. And as a matter of fact, there was a guy that did a master's thesis back in 1972 on our property, and he actually found that not only are there a bunch of volcanics over on our property, but there's these hydrothermal breccias that have ripped up rocks from down below and brought them up to surface, and they're frozen there in time. And when you take a look at the fragments that are in those breccias, you can actually see that, yeah, they're limestones from down below. They're heavily skarn altered and heavily mineralized. So it's proof positive that there's a strong hydrothermal system at depth. And there's been, in the 70s, there was a few drill holes that were actually drilled in the area and proved that sure enough, there's strong alteration and strong mineralization at depth. But then the Christmas Mine shut down in 1981. Everybody left the area, and there's been no interest in the area since then. And so it's been sitting dormant for 40 plus years, waiting for us to come in and pick up the torch and carry the project forward. So it's a great opportunity for us to bring in a modern exploration toolbox. We can bring in things like deep looking geophysical techniques like VTEM, where we fly a survey, and it does a really good job of mapping out sulfide systems at depth and things like that. So we can take a fresh look at the exploration in the area. It's going to take a few deep drill holes to test our thesis. But I think by the time we're done, say 10 deep drill holes, we'll probably have a good idea whether we want to carry forward with the project or not. The risks at Hotbrusha are certainly higher than they are down at La Delita, but the potential rewards are enormous. So if we find a deposit like others have been found in the area, we're in elephant country, and so the potential to find a big deposit here are very compelling. So I think that this is going to bring a lot of excitement to the market, and also that the two projects work very well together, because we're in a drilling program at La Delita right now. We'll be reporting on that drilling for several months to come. And then after the reporting on that program is winding down, we should have permits in place to be able to start the deep drilling at Hotbrusha. And so the two projects will naturally interfinger with each other in terms of the news flow. And we'll be able to keep the investors satisfied in terms of an exciting story on their plate at all times.
What do you think? And I know this doesn't apply necessarily to exploration at all, but as these projects in Arizona advance and you get into permitting, what do you think of Arizona as a jurisdiction now with respect to permitting? We've definitely seen some challenges, but for anybody who's looking to develop a project, which is obviously not you, but What do you think on permitting in the jurisdiction that Arizona provides at this point?
I think that Arizona is a great jurisdiction to be in from a mining perspective. Clearly, it's a part of the world that has relied heavily on mining as the backbone of the economy there, and there's no such thing as an easy jurisdiction anymore. It does not exist. There's about half the world that we won't work in because of the lack of security of tenure and the lack of ability to permit deposits. And we do not include Arizona in that part of the world. We think that this is a place where permitting should be pretty straightforward. Now, there are a couple of examples of good deposits in Arizona that have seen permitting challenges, and I don't think that there's any reason to think that Hotbrusha would fall into the same pitfalls as those deposits that have been challenged. They've got very specific land use issues around them that I don't think would apply in our case. We've got two nearby towns where virtually 100% of the community is employed by mining or spin-offs of mining. So it's a very friendly community to be working within. I really think that in terms of ranking of places where I would want to work in the world, Arizona ranks up there very highly.
We'll see how Arizona goes here with some of their imminent permitting projects. You've got an ISR project there that's being permitted, Florence Copper, and you've got, of course, some bigger stuff, Resolution, et cetera, that continues to be battled out there. But interesting jurisdiction, Arizona, at this point. There's a few good ones left in the States, as you know. Overall strategy here, Steve, where would you like to see this company, say, in the next 12 to 18 months? And what do you see as the overall strategy here for the company?
Yeah, well, as mentioned in the beginning, we want to make sure that we identify Infinitum Copper as one of the premier copper explorers out there. We want to stand out from our peers by being a group that really is skilled at identifying opportunities to make discoveries and build wealth through discovery. And so far, I think with the two projects we've got in the portfolio, we've done an excellent job of identifying opportunities like that. And I think over time we'll continue to build the portfolio. Ultimately, I'd like to have 4 or 6 projects in the company, and we can continue to cultivate them and move them forward as we have success on them. And as the exploration game goes, if we're not having success, then we look for additional opportunities to replace them. So we got the right team, we're working in the right jurisdictions, and I think we're off to a running start with the two projects that we've got.
And for potential investors who are on the sidelines listening here, Infinitum Copper stands at about 12 million Canadian market cap here. What would you say to those who are listening about the opportunity with this exploration stage company?
I first of all, you have to take a look at are you a believer in copper? And if you've done any research into the fundamentals on the copper market, it's pretty compelling that you do want to be invested in this sector. And if you're going to be looking to invest in exploration companies, I think that Infinitum Copper really stands out from its peers in terms of the people behind the company, and we're very early stage, and it's a pretty compelling value at 12 million market cap.
Best way for investors to contact the company?
Yeah, you can reach out to us through our website, www.infinitumcopper.com. And actually, the general email address is info@infinitumcopper.com, or you can just email me directly, steve@infinitumcopper.com. And we also have on our website a number of social media links so you can follow the company and our progress as we move forward. We're very active on social media, so that's really a good way of keeping abreast of what's going on in the company.
Well, Steve, thank you for taking the time to introduce us to Infinitum Copper. Good luck with the venture. We'll speak soon, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.